Good evening and welcome to the Jinn&Tonic show on this Friday, the 14th of December 2018. We're almost at the end of the year. Welcome to the show, which will be... Oh, I can hear myself. That's not so good. Let me just close that off. Islam, is it Hinduism in disguise? And as always, I have my fabulous co-host. Stop spamming. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, ladies, gents, and others.
And we have our special guest, Born Atheist, or we'll just refer to her as Born.
And I'll do the atheist.
Yeah, you can do the atheist side. Good evening, Born. How are you?
I was muted. This was a bit of, you sprang a surprise.
You just need to unmute yourself there, Born, so we can hear you. I don't think I can unmute you. You have to do it yourself. So, Born, at the top of your screen, where...
Oh, there you go.
There we go.
Sorry, my laptop's a little slow, so it took a while.
Okay, there we go. So we'll try not to interrupt you because your audio is not so good. But thank you very much for joining us. Born has very kindly done a presentation, which we'll get to a little bit later on, around Hinduism and atheism. So thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to hand over to Stops initially, and then we'll go through some crazy comments. Feel free to jump in at any point you want to with what we're talking about at the moment, and then we'll get on to the main topic shortly.
Okay, sure thing.
Okay, welcome to the Jinn&Tonic show, where we address Islam. And as far as I know, we are the only English-speaking open platform show on Islam, where anybody can join us and discuss Islam, can make suggestions, can find errors, mistakes, or whatever, what we say, when we say these are the mistakes, errors, and inconceivable whatever in Islam. So we, the Jinn&Tonic show, we critique, okay, we use facts, reality, reasoning, and we have the intention, and we always have been, I think, about bringing facts to an ideology, to confront Islam with reality, engage, dialogue, discuss differences in Islam. Now, that does not mean that we are also prepared to talk about claims when they refer within Islam, within the Qur'an, within the Hadith, within the text, to something that is related to Islam. But in general, we are discussing Islam. So instead of being strictly divisive, we do try and build bridges by finding commonalities and positive notions, as well as applying logic reasoning. So we do get frustrated and sound strident and harsh, but it's not what we want. And we look forward to good arguments, and who knows, maybe someone can bring up a convincing good reason to believe there is a powerful and supernatural entity somewhere out there, even though I must admit, I strongly doubt it. So we expose those who lie and deceive, who are willfully ignorant, and educate those who never had the benefit of any kind of scientific education, yet confront us with false claims based in science. Now, what I always try and start off with is the goodie of the day, where we find something, and let me tell you, it's not always that easy to find something really positive in the Hadith, because there's very little positive in the Quran, but we do find things now and again which we find which are positive and which give you something good, a nice outlook on life. And this one I found in Al-Bukhari, and it's in book 77, and it's Hadith number 598, in case you want to check this. I'm not making this up, I'm just reading what it says there. And this is by our good friend, narrated Abu Huraira. And he says, Allah's apostle said, no woman should ask for the divorce of her Muslim sister so as to take her place, but she should marry the man without compelling him to divorce his other wife, for she will have nothing but what Allah has written for her. Isn't that nice? So if you want to marry the man who's already got a couple of wives, don't ask him to divorce them, just join the club. I think that's very nice.
Right.
Okay, so the rest is going to be up to Born Atheist now.
Well, before we do that,
what happens in the Jinn&Tonic show is that we get people to hold short lectures, and if anybody wants to do that, please go ahead and do so. You can come and talk to us, we don't bite, And you can say, listen, I've got this idea, and it doesn't matter whether it's pro-Islam, anti-Islam, contradicting Islam, whether it's criticizing. Just do not, please do not criticize and insult or anything individual Muslims. That is something that we don't do. We try and keep it, looking at the ideas of Islam. If you want to do that, go ahead. Like I'm now reading, or I'm going through a couple of things on Scientology. And I found some remarkable similarities in the cult of Scientology and the cult of Islam. Okay, hit it off.
Okay, so I'm going to do the crazy comments, which I'll share on screen. Born, if you want to unmute yourself, if you want to comment as we go through these, then feel free to share a comment as you listen to a few of these. If any of these are familiar to you or anything like that, then obviously feel free to share your views. So I'm going to bring this up on screen now and present this to everybody. So you'll have to look at the screen itself. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. So this comes from another lovely ex-Muslim lady, Lily. And here's some comments that she sent me. Presumably this is from, I'm guessing it's a Muslim lady. While I respect her decision and journey, I am the only person who giggles at the name change. In the Emirati Arab dialect, shuhada means what's this, that. And somebody said, yay, you don't have to cover your head, Sinead. So this is obviously Sinead O'Connor, who converted to Islam. You barely had any hair and you will be cool without both. Sending your love and support on the new journey. And another person said, Miss Islam Dia, I listened to her music when I was in England. The last I heard about Sinead, she suffers bouts of depression. Islam is the answer to all of her problems. And I said, thanks very much. So clearly this Muslim thinks that Islam is the answer to depression. So Lily sent me that, thinking that was interesting. I'm not sure how that's the case, but I'm sure this particular person believes that.
If I see something in the chat, should I go and address this immediately?
Is it related to the comments or something else?
Something else.
Well, let me just finish the comments and then we'll just hold on to it.
Okay, then I'll copy this and then put it on the list.
Yeah, put it on the list there. Cool. Some report I saw that the Irish are the best in Islamic practice, not being Muslim, but she knows it best now. Subhana Allah. MashaAllah. I listened to her interview a while back about mental health issues. At the time, she was so sad. I thought, I wish she had Islam to help her. While I respected it, and then then this was the carry on. This is the same thing. So obviously these commenters were commenting on Sinead O'Connor and suggesting that they wish she had Islam, and now of course she has turned to Islam. Here's again one of our favorites. We've had this gentleman on before. This is Armin Navabi. He's an ex-Muslim. He's quite popular. He runs the Atheist Republic. Here's some religion-related news. This is kind of kinky shit that they do in MEK, Marxist terrorist, and weird sex-based cult that Armin supports in Iran. I thought you would like this kind of thing, Armin. You sick terror-supporting piece of shit. The MEK leader and the MEK and their leader are the most organized and well-funded opposition to Iran's regime. The problem is that they're a terrorist cult hated by most Iranians. They have the support of the US and have protests in Iran to build the following on social media. People people just like to make stuff up. Why is it so easy for some to assume things willy-nilly? So obviously, for those who don't know, as I say, Armin is a quite well-known and outspoken ex-Muslim, does videos and so forth, and the hate sort of stuff that he gets is, I mean, this is very, very mild here. Sick terror supporting, as if he supports these people. So occasionally we get that. That's the same thing we've had already. Why is it going? There we go. I won't read this whole thing. It's a bit small anyway. I didn't write comment, but violence stop. I grew up in the Islamic nation and I now live in Europe. And somebody put there, thanks, multiculturalism. So I understand your feelings about freedom of expression. But here's the interesting part, and this is again from a Muslim. But you must also understand that insulting our prophet is akin to somebody raping. Let me just make this bigger so people can see this. Make sure I've got this here. Here we go. Is akin to somebody raping your mother or daughter. This is the reaction both I and most of my Muslim ummah feel. Yes, they are just words or drawings, but the reaction they cause represents the true pain in our very soul you cause. And thus our reaction is and continues to be seen as overly harsh in the West, but completely understandable and justified to many who share our faith. Born, what do you think of this statement?
Well, in my opinion, I think every single thing needs an opposition, because if there isn't an opposition, then evil could just take over this world. I mean, basically, it's a simple thing of like, say, you accuse someone of murdering you, or murdering someone, you have to take them to court, and both sides have to be seen. And when we read so much of cruelty and things that happen, that Muslims are supposed to do to the rest of the world, of course there has to be some kind of criticism. So the fact is, insulting someone it's just words. It's intangible. It can be fixed. But when you rape someone, you can never give them back their dignity. You can never give them back their self-confidence. And especially killing someone, you can't bring them back to life. So I completely, I mean, I understand that people can get offended, but understand that people's lives and a physical harm is more dangerous to somebody rather than just mere words of insult. That's what I think.
Yes, yeah. And I think this whole thing that some, and he or she, whoever this person is, and this is what they do as well on occasions. They seek to speak for all Muslims, or most Muslims, I and most of my Muslim ummah, as if this person is polled or understands how 1.5 billion Muslims think. But this thing of akin to raping your daughter and mother because somebody insulted the Prophet, for those of us who have never been in Islam, is just completely, well, A, insane, but B, we can't even understand it. It's beyond our comprehension.
Exactly.
But here's the response. And somebody responded, "Thank you for demonstrating the reason why Europeans need to get their shit together and start kicking you out." It is not the same. It is, because here's the same thing. Sorry, they quoted them here. You honestly believe that insulting a man dead for 1,300 years is the same as raping a living, breathing human being who can feel pain? Sorry?
I was about to say the same,
Yes.
A man dead for 1,300 years, when you're talking about hurting someone that you can see and, that exists today.
Well, exactly. That, again, assuming that this person lived and did what he said. There's some question marks whether it anyway. Please answer this. I would genuinely like to know, are you serious when you say this? And this Muslim person responded, "It's not the same. It's far worse to insult the Prophet. Yes, the pain and trauma of rape is awful. Yet when you insult the most perfect and noble man who ever lived, traumatize the entirety of the Muslim Ummah, far more than just physical action. In essence, you rape our souls and celebrate it and push it on our faces. Of course, there will be reactions." So, this is the sort of, and again, clearly this person is not speaking for the entire Muslim Ummah, although he or she thinks they are. So that's the first delusion. But then this whole thing that, yes, it's far worse to say some words about a dead man that they hold in esteem than, yes, rape is awful, but this is far worse. And this is, some of the people, hopefully it's a minority, but we don't know.
No, it's not the minority. It is definitely not the minority. It is practically, I would say, about 80%.
So you feel that a lot of Muslims agree with this sort of statement, this
yes,
view?
This is the general consensus for all Muslims. Do not insult the Prophet.
I wonder if they all feel it to the same degree, though. Being that rape is is bad, but this insult is far worse. I mean, I know I understand that they feel insulted, but I wonder how many of them think it's far worse than raping somebody. And that in fact, what does they say here? You rape our souls. Firstly, you've got to demonstrate a soul exists. And then exactly how do you rape a soul? By saying some words?
Exactly. It's the same thing, because I remember when I was defending, I had a huge argument a few months ago with 3 people. And I was trying to justify and say, I don't understand how a God would ask a rapist to bring up, or a rape victim to bring 4 witnesses into, to prove that he had raped someone. And I said, I don't know any rapist who raped anyone with 4 witnesses watching, and I said, that's a really ridiculous thing. And you can't, then we went into a heated argument, and they came up to me and said, you're acting like you've been raped. Like it's, I said, so sorry, but do I have to be a rape victim to fight for women? It didn't make any sense. I think I don't think that Muslims take rape as a serious offense, because at the end of the day, in the Quran, it does say that a wife is supposed to give in to her husband, and she can't claim that it is rape if it is to her husband. So there
Yes.
you go.
Yeah, exactly. And somebody responded here, do you think this barbarism is completely understandable? And this person responded, how would you react if an entire culture felt it had the right to not only rape your daughter, but to celebrate it in newspapers and magazines? Yes, I understand that usually the reaction is barbaric, but this is because you cannot understand yet how important our prophet to every aspect of our culture, community, society, and personal well-being. He is the most perfect and important person. We simply must not allow him to be insulted without recourse. Maybe the question we need to start asking every Muslim that we speak about is whether they agree with us. What is their view on this? To see what do they say. Presumably, most Muslims will say they feel insulted, but are they as extreme as this particular person? Maybe that's something we can ask if we have any Muslim guests that come on, just to get their view.
I mean, we're talking about countries like Indonesia and Maldives, who are not considered extreme in any sense of the word, but they themselves stone their rape victims to death. We only think it's Saudi Arabia, but there are many other countries in the world that do the same. So
Yeah.
it is the general consensus.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. So this was a comment with a full and Sabur debate that happened, for those who remember, and we did a couple of shows on that. So this person is responding, full evolution is a fact. Sabur, no, it's built on a probabilistic framework and assumptions based on homology that are countered by homoplazy. Full, that's exactly what I said. These white atheists hate it when a bearded brown man proves them wrong. That's why he ended the convo. The delusion is strong with some of these people. It's incredible. No understanding of what the discussion really was. And at no point did he say that's exactly what I've said. The summation is just comical, I think.
I don't blame Muslims in that sense, because they aren't allowed to think. That's the problem. They aren't allowed to question anything, because that itself is a sin, and that itself can get them killed. There's a verse in the Quran that says anyone who spreads corruption in the land should have his hands and feet cut off from opposite sides, and corruption is not specified. So basically, one person going to another Muslim and saying, don't be a Muslim because it's a false religion, could be seen as corruption. You're not supposed to question anything. That's the problem.
Yes, that's a very straightforward interpretation that people can make. Exactly. There's another one. Scratching around in the video, obviously understood what was going on, and being disingenuous and childish when he starts losing the discussion. And somebody replied, no, Phil doesn't know shit. But this person had a great response. Debating Sabur is like playing chess with a pigeon. The pigeon shits all over the chessboard, then struts around like it's won the game. Sabur is a master of sophistry whose ego will never allow him enlightenment. So obviously we've got the crazy comment in the middle, and some clarity on both sides of that. Oh, and here's another one. This is an older one. It's still a beautiful discussion. This was as well. Phil just collected and repeated science formula and data. And this by no means don't make Phil educated, nor make him correct in what he explained. So obviously, Phil used terms that this poor viewer had no clue. It just sounded scientific. And instead of, if it had come out of Sabur's mouth or Hijab's mouth, they would have been crowing about how educated and true it was. But because it came out of a non-Muslim's mouth, this is the sort of response you get. Again, sometimes we do these Born just partly for educating our viewers out there, but sometimes just for entertainment on the stupidity of some of these commenters. Sometimes you forget there's really ignorant people out there. And again, this is not all. Let me stress, this is not all Muslims. Here was an interesting one. So this is, I think this is a Muslim fellow, and he said, Abu Muhammad Ali, ever the troll, isn't he? And he's referring to Mufti Monkfish, who's quite a knowledgeable fellow in evolution and some of the philosophical sides of it. My troll side come out when I encounter other trolls. It can be fun to have a little back and forth. I know they say don't feed the trolls, but sometimes you can't help provoke them. So Mufti Monkfish, of course, replied, have you ever considered the possibility that the criticism is simply correct and valid? Evolution does not need to be your field. all you need is average reading comprehension. But this guy said, Mufti Monkfish, correct and valid. Someone likes it. Nah, no, can't consider it. And Mufti Monkfish. The commented question was not for me. Actually. So you might be in luck. Did you read it? Do you even know what the criticism is?
Exactly.
And of course, somebody that's a non-Muslim, no, can't consider it. As you were saying, Born, this is of course the perfect thing. No, we can't think about it. If it in any way, challenges our worldview, then and it looks like it's correct, we can't consider that. It must be wrong somehow. I just wanted to highlight this fellow here. So before I read the comment, this was, again, somebody sent this to me. I'm a journalist and human rights activist, and he's the chairman of the Jammu and Kashmir Youth Civil Society, okay? So just bear that in mind.
A human rights activist.
Human rights activist. Now let's just see what this human rights activist says. Human rights. Yes, I don't like public shaming, but sometimes, it becomes necessary. This fellow says, why I need to explain this to you. I don't need any certificate to prove what I am. I strongly believe in human rights. As per Islam, yes, those who indulge in gay sex should be beheaded, and I won't hesitate to behead them with my own hand. So if this is human rights, goodness knows what a non-human rights person would look like.
I think they should just change this to 1.6 billion rights and not human rights, because they don't consider the rest of us humans.
Well, certainly not in the same level as they are. Yeah, exactly.
Can you increase the volume, Rob?
Can I increase the volume? Let me have a quick look here and make Born's volume a little bit louder. Yeah, let me do that. Hopefully that's a bit louder. There we go. We'll see if that works better. Okay, and there, I think we're back to the same one. Yeah, that's the same one. So there we go.
Can I add a few, because I just remembered I did not send you this.
Yes, go ahead if you want to share your screen.
Because I found, I think this is for 4 of them, and I found them, and this is quite, in my eyes, this is hilarious. Why can't I share this?
Well, you are sharing something. I'm seeing something that says, is it wrong to have an imaginary husband?
Okay, I'll just leave it at that. If you can see this is fine. You're putting it. Okay, this is from Islam QA. Can you? This is an Islam site, and this is the question that somebody is asking. Seriously, is it wrong to have an imaginary husband? Because there is a woman who is saying, well, I'm all alone. This is why I'm imagining it, so that I get some self-worth out of this. This is seriously what she was asking. And she's asking for advice. Is it wrong? And this is the kind of thing that Muslims are contemplating. This is the kind of thing when we're thinking about the responsible research on stem cells or something, the rest of Islam is debating whether it is wrong to have an imaginary husband. This is, I thought this was absolutely amazing. Now, here's a fatwa where somebody asked a question, what happens if we have something in the Sharia, if we have something in the Hadith? Are we allowed to answer somebody? And this guy says, this is my fatwa, this is my decree. It is not acceptable for people other than accredited Sharia scholars who are well versed in the sciences of the Sharia to issue fatwas about Islam. In other words, any kind of decision on Islam or its rituals, as they don't have the qualifications to do so. Now, the hijab, which is an Islamic obligation on Muslim women, is well established by means of the Quran, Sunnah, and the agreement. And this is the funny thing. It is established by the agreement of reliable Sharia scholars in past and present. Now, it's not in the Quran. Yes, it's in the Sunnah, but the rest is all old men who are deciding what to do on this topic. So this is how we are tricked into believing that the Sharia, that the hijab is part of the Sharia, and therefore women must wear it.
No, it is part of the Sharia.
Sorry, say again?
It is a part of the Sharia. I think it comes in chapter 37, verse 51 or 50 or something like that. Because up until then, women were, they didn't have to cover their face, or they didn't have to cover much. But there's a verse in chapter 4:23, I think, where it just says, cover your private parts, lower your gaze, and dress
Exactly.
conservatively. But
So
then
the Quran does not say that you have to cover your body excepting face and hands. This is in the hadith.
but then at a later time, because when Muhammad was about to die, in chapter 37, maybe 47 or 48, I can't remember, but chapter 37, um, where one of his followers said that he was going to marry Aisha after the death of Muhammad, and because she's so beautiful. And that's when Muhammad got a revelation and said that, nobody will see any of the women henceforth. They will talk to them from behind a veil, and that they will not be allowed out of the house without his presence. So that's where this, covering yourself comes from. It was technically only supposed to be applicable to Muhammad's wives, because he married too many women, and he also married his daughter-in-law in the same verse. Other followers realized that, he would obviously ask them to take, he would want their wives as well, and that's when they all decided that all women will be covered from, that point onwards.
Born, I'm not
I
hearing
think
you that, Born. We're not hearing you that clearly. Do you have a headset or anything you can plug in? Because your mic is really not coming through that clearly. I've made you louder, but if I make you too loud, then it sort of distorts your voice. So I just want to know if we can hear you, but
Can you hear me now?
just speak a little bit again.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, that's better.
It's a little bit better. We'll see how it goes. You don't have something you can plug into your computer, right? Like earphones with like a jack on it that you plug in, that you can use for your phone, that you can plug into your computer at all?
No, the thing is, hold on. The computer mic is broken. I'm going to try something. Let me see if it works.
Okay, let's just see.
What is interesting is on the right here, there are two questions. One is, should I wear the hijab when I read or listen to the Quran?
Hello.
The other thing is, since I wore the hijab, my life has been ruined. So you get very different things regarding the hijab.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Just speak up a little bit.
Are you hearing me clearly, or are you hearing me like faint?
That's okay. Let me just make you a bit louder. Just speak for me now.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, it still distorts a bit. Okay, we'll have to live with it. Your voice is a bit distorted.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. I'll just try and keep the volume a bit lower. People, if you're watching this, you'll have to turn the volume up on your side here. Born's mic is not so good. If I make it any louder, it'll distort, and then you won't hear the words properly.
Now, the funny thing is, the word hijab itself is not used anywhere in the Quran as a piece of clothing. And this is something that most non-Muslims are not even aware of. They just accept it.
Yeah, because the word that's used there is a veil, as in a curtain veil. So what Muhammad intended to was that, his women will never be seen by anyone else ever again. And
yes,
it's just a veil. I can't remember if it was chapter 33 or chapter 37, but it's one of the two. That's where this where he married his daughter-in-law. Then the verse was that no one will marry anyone, and no one will see his wife ever again.
So anyway, I then asked them a question, and then a couple of minutes later, I got the reply. Thank you for visiting Ask the Scholar. So this is Ask the Scholar. So I asked the scholar a question, and it says, we already received today's quotas of questions. Please visit us tomorrow to submit your questions. The number of accepted questions will be limited, so try and submit your question as early as possible. So if they don't like a question or something, they will just simply ignore it and say, we'll come back tomorrow. And then the same thing happens the
Did
next
you try
day.
coming back, and if you did, what happened?
No. This is all I got. You never get to ask a question regarding the veil, because I had a question, and then they just read the question, and then I get back, thank you for visiting, and that's it. You never get to answer your never get an answer for your question that you've asked.
I mean, logically, they couldn't have given you an answer the next day.
Yeah, but they don't.
Submit your question again.
And then I managed to get into a chat with a guy, and I asked him, how is it that you say, okay, you need to give dawah to other people when it says that Allah is the one who guides whom He will. So it doesn't really make sense for you as a human being to do this. God should do this because God, Allah, is the one who decides at the end of the day who is going to be guided anyway. So you as a human can't decide this. So why is it that you are doing something where you know that it's going to be Allah who's doing it anyway?
Yes.
And then he says, I got your question now, because he needed 5 times for me to explain this. And then he says, thanks, I will tell you about that. And that was all I heard. There was nothing else because they couldn't answer the question. So that was the end of that one. So they couldn't answer the question as soon as you're using logics.
Yeah, I think there's a verse in the Quran that says that people cannot see, the unbelievers or the idolaters cannot see the truth because Allah has blinded them on purpose.
Exactly.
And I think, you know,
So
that was one of the first verses that got me thinking. I'm like, wait a second. So it doesn't matter whether they try to believe or not. He's still sending them to hell. Like, you know, it just doesn't make any logical sense.
it doesn't, and you can see how ridiculous Islam is, and how much deceit is in the Quran. And this is why it says in the Quran, you need to go, and this is in we know this all 16:125. It says, okay, you need to talk to people about Islam. You need to try and convince them of Islam. And there's another sentence in the Quran which says that who else should give the good message of Islam if not the Muslim, because the Muslim knows exactly how good it is. And then you get the contradiction. Sorry, no, only God can do this, and it's pretty useless what you're doing. And then the final one I have is on embryology. My favorite topic. And of course, somebody said when I asked, well, can you give me something that is true in embryology or something? Or is there embryology in the Quran? Because I maintain there isn't. And then it says, if you are a doctor in embryology, you can't talk if you are not shut up ignorant. Can
I didn't know there was a
me
doctor
what
of
this
embryology. I think that's brilliant.
If you are a doctor, you can't talk. And if you are not, then you need to shut up.
Yes. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. And I've never heard of a doctor of embryology anyway. Maybe that's a new doctorate somewhere that's been invented. But just going back on what you said there, Stops, there's a comment in the chat here from our ever friendly Muslim fellow, Fruitful. Allah creates the cause and effects and makes one thing a cause for another. That doesn't answer the question, of course, in any way. That's just trying to explain how this all happens. Blinded them by decreeing that they choose not to believe. So,
what about the things that don't have a cause?
Say again?
What about the things that don't have a cause?
What doesn't have a cause, I guess.
Well, there's a lot of things. Cause is hopelessly overrated. Okay, I mean, this concept of cause and effect. There are millions of things that without any kind of cause. I mean, if the whole of quantum physics, this is bullshit. There's none of the concepts of cause apply within quantum mechanics. You then go to other areas. There's no such thing as cause. What is the cause of the spinning of an electron? You know, it's bullshit. This is total bullshit.
Oh, probably they could say, you know, the laws of quantum mechanics. Who knows? But I don't want to go too far off on that.
Okay. One thing I've been asked to do. This is a 2-minute thing, and that is I'm a Muslim. Okay, I'll just go into the comments just now. I've just been asked to play this because this is now the Christmas contribution.
We can't hear anything. So are we meant to hear something? No.
Oh shit. I hate this. I hate it. I hate it. But it is. System sound.
Have you enabled Minicam through the audio output?
Or have I? I thought I had. No, I haven't. You're right. Oh goodness, I haven't. Okay, now?
did that? By Muhammad Tawheed.
I want to wish all of you a Merry Christmas. What? You're not Christian? Oh, well, too bad. I'm still wishing you a Merry Christmas. Because you know what? It doesn't matter if you're Jewish, Hindu, or marketing major. I want to wish all of you a Merry Christmas. Because we're not celebrating the birth of Jesus Christ here. We are celebrating the commercialism of Christmas, which is very important. And I think sometimes we forget about that. We forget about how important it is to go out and buy stuff for the people we love and care. And also for getting those gifts in return. And also for, like Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, Frosty. I mean, these are all people that we need to, think about when Christmas comes around. So let's just be, let's just keep that in mind. Commercialism. So Merry Christmas, all right? All right. So when somebody says Happy Holidays to me, I say Merry Christmas back to them. And then if they say I'm Jewish, I'm like, still what? It's fucking holiday. It's not Christmas. So, all right. Yeah. Raise your hand. Anybody here live in Eastern Massachusetts? Just out of curiosity? Oh, everybody. All right. Wow. How about that Route 128 traffic?
Gets me every time.
Have any of you?
Great stuff. Stops. Who did that? People are asking in the chat there. Who created that? Do we know?
I have no idea. Simon James gave it to me and said, just play it.
Nice. You're a bit softer now, so I might have to just push your volume up a bit there.
No, it's just going away from the microphone because I'm laughing so much.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
shit.
whoever
I
did
think
that,
this is very funny.
that's excellent. So on that entertaining note, let me bring up the presentation now. We're now going to hand over to Born Atheist. As I say, Born Atheist is an ex-Muslim. Born, if you just tell us a little bit about yourself, whatever you feel comfortable talking about, and then we'll go into the presentation, and you just tell me when to change over to the next slide, and we'll go through this, and at the end we can have a discussion. And Stops, if you keep an eye on the chat and bring in anything that you like. But did you have a few comments before we started?
There's a lot of, there were a lot of questions. My new channel. Okay, Simon James is explaining where this comes from. Brilliant stuff. There were, should I go through the questions quickly?
I'll tell you what, let's keep it till the end. Let's just do this because I don't think this will be that long, and then let's bring up those questions if we can. Otherwise, okay. we'll probably take.
I'll collect as soon as I see them.
Perfect. All right, let me just share my screen here. Hopefully we can see this and present this to everybody. There we go. Okay, Born Atheist, over to you. If you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go into the presentation. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. So basically, obviously, I was born to Muslim parents. I don't call myself an ex-Muslim because I never was a Muslim. I never took it up. I was always a skeptic. I always wanted to know, the answers to my questions before I did anything or practiced anything. I was constantly drilled and yelled at and screamed at for not practicing and how I'm going to hell. And starting from the age of 6 to 7, I did and was living in Saudi Arabia at that time. I don't know how I escaped all of that. But little things like, this verse where it said, Allah has blinded those, the hearts of the non-believers, so they never will believe. I'm like, so they're going to hell anyway. My friends, my school friends, people who are not Muslims are going to hell anyway. So why are they being punished for something that, is not their fault? And I started asking lots of questions, and my parents were like, okay, we can't answer these questions. There's going to let it be. And I don't know. I just kept, researching. And one thing that, obviously when you grow up in the Middle East, you also know, you're very familiar with Israel and Palestine and, all the fights and, the wars that are going on in that land. And I was aware of the fact that, there are 3 different religious sects claiming ownership on that land. And in my head, I'm thinking, why did God, take up a job as a real estate agent and promise one tiny plot, to 3 different people? This world is huge. It just didn't make any sense. And I don't know, I just never took it up. I mean, yes, they say that, being born to Muslim parents would make me a Muslim, but my justification and my argument to that is, if I was born to parents who are doctors or who are accountants, does that make me a doctor just because I'm born to them? They have to practice it, they have to learn it, they have to go to university, they have to study it, they have to accept it, and they have to pass out as a doctor. That doesn't, it's not in my genes. The only thing that I can't change is my genetics and my blood type, you know. Everything else is interchangeable and everything else is a choice. So when people say you're born to Muslim family, you're a Muslim, and I'm like, no, I was born a human being, and I refuse to be brainwashed into religion that didn't make any sense to me from the get-go. And I have to admit, my dad being, not too strict also let me get away with it. And that was it. So I traveled the world. I got to know lots of people. I started studying religion in very, very, very basic, or, very basic standards, saying, from grade 5 and grade 6. And lucky me, I got to study all religions from a very young age. Start grade 5 and grade 6. And that sort of just sent me on my path to figuring out that all religion was just, made up.
Yeah, so there wasn't a specific point where you changed. It was a gradual process for you?
No, I think that verse in the Quran was probably one thing that triggered it all. And the Palestine Israel, the war that's going on there. And I mean, it's a little silly thing, but I think I was 6 years old and trying to put, milk and cookies for Santa Claus. And my dad said, there isn't a Santa Claus. Can you go to sleep now? And I'm like, yeah, but, he's coming with gifts. And he's like, yeah, we're not Christians. And I'm like, yeah, so, no man can fly through the sky with a reindeer. And I'm like, yeah, but did Muhammad fly through the sky with a donkey? Like, so what, one person can and one person can't? I mean, these are little things, but that's probably what made me not want to follow it. I found it hilarious. I used to giggle when people prayed. I used to, my parents would have to, chase me out of the mosque or keep me away from religious customs because, I just giggle and laugh and like not really know what to do. And I got away with it. And here I am, still alive, not stoned to death.
Good, and now you're obviously an ex-Muslim and presumably proud to do that, and happy to come on and share your experience and I guess talk about it. And hopefully in time, if you feel that's of value, you can share more and more. I mean, I think for me personally that ex-Muslims are the kryptonite against it. And if you're not familiar with it, they are the best cure, if you wish to use that term, for Islam, because a lot of Muslims will listen to what ex-Muslims have to say because they relate similar stories and how they've come to think critically and to evaluate things differently. And I have many, and I can count yourself now, Facebook friends that are ex-Muslims, and they constantly share, posts and so forth where people have listened to them. They've been very resistant, and over time they've listened, and they've started to think, and eventually have left Islam. So. Well, we welcome you as well as somebody now, and obviously we'll put you out. If you have a YouTube channel, if you have information, please give that to me at the end. I'll post it for people to view. If not, then obviously this show will stand as, and if you'd like to come back for future ones, we can do that as well. So with that said, let me bring up this now. Can you see them? Can you see the screen with the PowerPoint?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Can
so
you
basically, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Like there are lots and lots of little things that made me realize that Hinduism and Islam seem to be extremely parallel to each other. And funny thing is that it looked very different when you see to the observer from the outside. And like little things, like I noticed that Hindu brides and the wives of when they get married, they would always take the husband's first name, and that the same thing was done by Muslim women. And little things like that started triggering this research that I was got on my way, and this is what we are here for. So obviously we all know that the symbol for Islam is the crescent, and that's something that is synonymous with Islam, and I always wondered where it came from. And yes, you can say it's a coincidence. It's an absolute coincidence that Lord Shiva, who is the one of the Hindu deities, also has a crescent symbol as his as his representation. But that's probably where it got started. So can we move on to the next?
Yes, there we go.
Next slide. Okay, so one of the main things of some of the main points, I've just put the common things between both religions. And as you can see on your screen, the Hindus consider the night or the Mahasivaratri, which is the nights of power, the nights of Shiva, to be the night where you have to pray and where Shiva will grant, or Lord Shiva will grant you everything that you desire. And what they normally do is that they fast during the day and they pray and chant prayers all the way through the night and can go on to like 4 or 5 in the morning. And that is exactly emulated by the Muslims on the 27th night of Ramadan, which is called Laylatul Qadr. And Layla is night and Qadr is power. So it basically means the same thing, and they do exactly the same thing. And you can't ignore the fact that they might be celebrated a few months apart, and that's because there was a delay in Muhammad being able to uh, conquer Mecca and then perform the pilgrimage, and he changed the dates and stuff like that. But they're pretty much the same, the same festival for the same reasons of praying. And most Muslims will dedicate about 6 to 7 hours, like starting from about 7:30 in the night, and will pray all the way to like 3 a.m. in the morning on the 27th night of fasting. And Deepavali again is identical to Hajj. It is the end of the year, end of the Hindu year, lunar year, and that's where the ending of the evil and the beginning of a new year starts, and where you can wash away all your sins, and you celebrate it by wearing clean clothes and with colors and lights. And that basically is the Hajj festival, where they go on the pilgrimage to end the year and wash yourself or wash your soul of all the sins that you've committed and rid yourself of all the evil and start the year, afresh. And that is the 12th month of the Muslim year. And then obviously I spoke about the Hindu brides, and there is a reason for that. The Hindu brides taking their husband's first name and not their last, because the Hindu brides or Hindu widows in the past, if the husband died, they were meant to throw themselves into the fire because they were considered, a lower caste or not considered fit for society any longer. So the only way that a Hindu widow would be able to redeem herself was to marry the husband's brother. So she had two choices: either throw herself into the fire, into the cremation fire of the husband, or marry the brother. Which meant if she had their last name, she wouldn't be identifiable, or she wouldn't, you wouldn't be able to identify whose wife she was at that moment in time. So this is why they chose to take the husband's first name, so that she could change it, depending on which brother she was married to. And that is the same principle that the Muslims follow, because you can marry your father-in-law, you can marry your husband's brother if he dies, and things like that. And there cannot be two Mrs. Mubaraks or something. It has to be Mrs. Ahmed and Mrs. something else. And that's how she identifies herself, because obviously in Islam, women are property of the man, and society needs to know which man owns her. And then, so that's basically where it is. We can, I think, move on to the next slide.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. And obviously Hindus fast during dawn to dusk, during the holy months. They have 4 holy months. I'm not really too sure of the names. It's too long for me to remember. And we all know that Muslims also have the fasts of Ramadan. And you get this. I think the Hindus, they fast for the Navaratri, which is the 9 days of fasting, where the 3 gods had created this goddess called Durga, who fought some evil this thing. And during those 9 days they fast and they pray. They fast during the day from dawn to dusk. They drink water, but they don't eat anything else from dawn to dusk. And then they spend the evening in prayer, thanking her for for ridding the world of evil. And that's pretty much what the Muslims do, except they don't do it for 10 days or 9 days. They do it for 30 days. And there is a hadith, I can't remember which one, but there is a hadith where Muhammad had said that he's going to extend the 9-day fast to, to 30 days, or to 28 days of the lunar calendar. So you can clearly see from that itself that he didn't invent these traditions. These traditions didn't come up because of him or his God. These traditions already existed. All he did was make himself the leader of what was already there. And
yes, he just changed it a little bit and then called it something, his following.
yeah, he's following in the sense because he didn't want to change anything or add anything different, because we're talking about trying to convince people who follow these traditions and customs for hundreds of thousands of years. And if you're trying to get them to believe you, the chances are is that they're not going to believe something brand new. That's going to take them some time. But if you hijack what they already know and then plonk yourself right in the middle of it, that's, that becomes easier, because then, it's for these followers, it's not like they're changing everything. They're just, he was just asking them to, to rid themselves of all the other gods, to accept, this god and him as this god's messenger.
Yes.
you know and it is very difficult. I mean, obviously we all know how difficult it is to change anybody's mind. I mean, we, even if we say that it is hard to change a Muslim's mind and it is hard to change and get them to think, if someone were to come to me and insist that, I like their favorite song, it's not going to happen. You can't force someone to do something that they're not going to, they're not comfortable doing. So I think, because one of the first verses he started with was claiming to be the messenger of the Abrahamic God, because that was the first word. And his wife Khadija took him to her uncle, who claimed that he's the messenger of that God. But then 3 years later was when he got the second revelation. So between that time, between the first time that he tried to convince his wife at that time to, that he was a messenger of her God because she was a Christian, uh, he gave it a break. And then when she was about to die, or she was, getting older, that's when he changed it and he decided to be the God of Allah. And I'll come to that towards the end. I think you've already seen the presentations. I don't want to ruin it for everyone else.
Okay,
And
sure.
then, yeah, so then menstruating women, both in both the customs, women that are menstruating are not allowed into a mosque or a temple. They're considered unclean and dirty and will displease the gods. And it is the same, it's the same for both religions. And believe it or not, even though Muslims pray 5 times and we think that it is only them that are devoted to, praying to the God or worshipping the God, and it is commendable. I have to admit, it is kind of commendable to do something 5 times a day and to give thanks. But what we don't realize is that the Hindus do the same. The only difference is that the Hindus do it privately in their homes. They usually have like a little shrine room or a small place in their homes, whereas the Muslims make it a public communal affair, and that's why it's always, it's the world sees sees Muslims as the ones that pray, but Hindus do the same, and they in fact have a prayer that starts early in the morning, and they have one at night, and they also have 3 in the day. But it's not like there are strict times for these things to be done, and it's not compulsory. Therefore, we may, it's not that obvious to the rest of the world.
Yes.
And yeah, that's a problem. I think Muslims, they have it good. I mean, I won't fault that. They do have it good because they do, they make it a very public affair. It's like everyone thinks, oh, wow, they're all gathering together, which is a nice thing. But the Hindus do it as well, just not so publicly. And it's more of a spiritual prayer for the Hindus, whereas for the Muslims, it's more of a show. Uh, and then you have their religious festivities, and we all know that the Muslims also look to the new moon to start and end their month of fasting, and Hajj, and some cities will see it today and some cities will see it tomorrow. And we've seen the comic Facebook memes and the articles where one country is celebrating their festival today and the other country is celebrating the other, but the same happens in India, the exact same thing. They also have to sight the moon, but obviously they don't. It's not more of a it's not done more on site, but it's done more on mathematical calculations. And we all know when the new moon is coming, so it's not like you have to see it to start a celebration. It's known, and therefore the Muslims get at least the Muslims search for the moon or the new moon is more publicly or more acknowledged by the world, because it changes from country to country depending on the sky and the weather and all of that. We can move on to the next one. Do you have anything to say? I mean,
no, that's good. That's good.
yeah. And yeah, so these are little things like you can you can see from just the little things that I've pointed out already that the Hindus do exactly the same thing that the Muslims do. It's just done more in a private and conservative manner. And because when it comes to Hindus, there are different gods and different traditions and different customs. And even though we call them Hindus, they're technically Hinduism is not a religion. It is more a cluster of different religions that popped up along the Indus Valley, where they worship different gods and different statues. Some worship just one, and some worship a cluster of them, depending on who they believe and don't believe. This is why it's not such a global affair, because they come in small sects compared to the Muslims who are, more joined on what they do and, how they follow their customs. Now, here's another picture that I'm trying to show you where Muslims circumambulate the Kaaba, which is the black box or the black building at Mecca. They do it anti-clockwise, whereas the Hindus do it clockwise. They do celebrate, they walk around a fire 7 times, and even when Hindu couples, when they get married, they tie each other, I don't know, I think using some piece of cloth, and then their husband walks the wife, or the wife walks behind the husband 7 times around a fire, and then the wife does the same thing. And the Muslims do it exactly in the same. I mean, not during the marriage ceremony, but the Muslims do walk around the Kaaba 7 times as well. I think though the Hindus may do it about 5 times or 3 times during the wedding. I'm not too sure, but as you can see, it's pretty much the same.
Yes, the numbers may differ, won't they? But the principle and the whole what they're doing is very similar, isn't it?
Yeah, it is very similar.
Yeah. Okay, we move on to the next one. There we go.
Yeah, and moving on to the Kaaba. So the Kaaba in Mecca is, we know that it's called the Kaaba, and it's also sometimes called the Masjid al-Haram. And the funny thing is that the picture on the left to your screen is the Kapalishwaram temple in India. And there are about 7 or 8 temples of this nature. And one of them, I think there were supposed to be 8 or 9, I'm not too if I can't remember the number, but one of them was supposed to be somewhere in Arabia. And it's funny because like I said in the slide, you can see that the Arabs don't have the sound P in their alphabet. So anything or any word that resonates or has the sound P is always replaced with B. So parking becomes barking, and potato becomes potato, and things like that. And the Kapalishwaran temple is dedicated to Lord Shiva. And he is the fire, he is the light, he is the end, he is the beginning. He is the greatest, Lord. When it comes to the Hindu Trinity, you get Lord Shiva, you get Rama, and you get Lord Vishnu. So Shiva is the end, Rama is the father of creation, and Vishnu is the preserver or the continuation. We can move on to the next slide.
Yes, there we go.
Yeah. Okay, so now this is a close-up of the Kapalishwaram temples. There are many of these in India, especially in southern India. And as you can see clearly from the hadiths, that when the Prophet entered Mecca on the day of conquest, there were 360 idols around the Kaaba, not inside, but around the Kaaba. The Prophet started striking them with a stick he had in his hand and was saying, "Truth has come and falsehood will neither start nor will it reappear." So you can clearly see that it is the Hindus that had these temples. It is very funny or ironic that, the Kaaba could easily have been named after the Kabalishwaran temples, and it was just shortened to Kaaba because, most Sanskrit words have been shortened, and, as long as when it's made its way, towards the west. And the inside of the temple usually had a Shiva Lingam stone, and there was nothing else on the inside because Shiva was but there was never a statue to represent him. It was all the other gods had statues to represent themselves, but not Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva was represented by a black stone. We can move on to the next one. Is any of this, like, are you finding any of this?
Yeah, this is interesting. Obviously, I'm not aware of this. And you also say part of your notes at the bottom was that
Yes.
obviously Muhammad destroyed the statues outside, which I think a lot of us know. And then you also
Yes.
said that instead of destroying the black stone, which
Yes.
he thought would anger his followers, he insulted it by placing it in an obscure point in the corner of the outside wall.
Yes. Now, this is a sacred black stone. And see, by the time he had conquered Mecca, it had been like 12 to 13 years. And there was no way that he would be able to destroy the most sacred, symbol to his followers and then still claim to be the messenger from this God. Because if he were to destroy that, probably what he was basing his entire ideology on, I think he'd have lost all of it, lost all of his followers. And he marched into Mecca on the last day of his conquest with 10,000 men. Uh, Obviously, I don't think he wanted to be cornered by that many people or anger that many people if he were to destroy that stone.
Okay, that's good to know. Okay,
Yeah.
there we go. Three daughters.
Yes. So it's funny because we have all heard of the satanic verse, and everyone says, it was Satan who said this and all of that. But there are many, 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 many verses. I think it goes into the hundreds of verses in the Quran where Muhammad would say something, and then there would be a different verse to say otherwise. And this is a single verse where he gave claim that it was
Just
because it confused his followers. So we all know that, and if you read the Quran, I think it's chapter 53 for anyone watching. It's chapter 53, verse 19 to 20. The names of these three daughters have been mentioned. So this is not the hadith. This is not, uh, you can't verify it, and none of those excuses. I'm not going to listen to that. But it's these names are there. So what it says is in the Quran. I didn't post the verse here. I'm sorry, but. What it says is in the Quran is, I've heard that you've considered, Manat, Al-Alat, and the third, Al-Uzza, to be associates of mine. And so basically what happened was, the story behind this is that when Muhammad started, talking about Allah being the only God, and all other gods are to be destroyed, and all other gods are, not to be worshipped any longer, it was causing problems with his tribe, and he was a part of that tribe, the Quraysh tribe, and he was the first son of the 10th son of the keeper of the Kaaba. And obviously, we all know that religion is money. That's the bottom line of it. Uh, I think they suck out about trillions of dollars from everywhere. It's donations to whatnot, and the Meccans, especially the Quraysh tribe, was very, very rich and wealthy based on the donations that came through from the pilgrims. So what happened was when Muhammad was trying to convince people to follow him and disregard all the other gods, the Quraysh came to him and asked him to at least let Allah accept his three daughters. Okay, and that they will be fine to disregard all the others because Allah and the three daughters were the most revered gods at that uh, in that temple, because they didn't want to lose their followers and their wealth, which would go along with their followers. And they were trying to make a reasonable explanation. They said, okay, we will all live in peace, just accept these three people. And then Muhammad pretended to go into a trance and said, "Yes, I Allah accept, my three daughters, Al Manat, Al Uzza and Al and Alat." And then what happened was Muhammad went back to his followers, and he was really happy, and he's thinking, what, maybe I can convince, I can get more followers this way. But the thing is, the people who had already converted to Islam by that time were quite angered by this. They're like, listen here, one moment you tell us it's only Allah, and the next moment you tell us Allah has three daughters, make up your mind. We're not going to believe you anymore. And that's when he came on and he said, no, this was, I didn't say it, it was, Satan said it. And then the Quraysh heard it and they were very angry because they're trying to make peace with with someone who was trying to cause havoc in the village, but also their nephew at the end of the day. This wasn't some stranger to them, this was their nephew. And they really just wanted him to, stop causing or stop disrupting the status quo that already existed in Mecca. And then, because I know about the satanic verse, I was curious because I was going down the moon and the connections between Lord Shiva and Allah, and I was curious and I decided to Google and figure out if Lord Shiva had three daughters, and surprisingly, he did. Uh, and Manasa means spiritual or prayer, wisdom, and Jyoti means night light, and Alak means night light, and Ashok Sundari means strength, and Al Uza means without sorrow and strong. I only put one meaning in there, but as you can see, even the meanings or the words are pretty much synonyms for the same words.
So so Lord Shiva and these three daughters were already part of the idols around the Kaaba.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they were already there. So what the Quraysh was trying to do was, what Muhammad was trying to do is, make himself the messenger of one God and disregard the others, because he didn't want anyone else to pray or worship any other gods, because then he wouldn't be able to garner a huge followership. He wanted to take over, and I kind of understand where he's coming from. I mean, you're born into a rich and wealthy family, your mom and your father are dead, uh, your wealth or your inheritance is not being shared with you correctly because you are the last son of the first son of the last son who no longer exists. The older siblings and the older uncles and his cousins were doing well, whereas he was a camel trader. He had to work for his living. He probably had a very difficult life, and I mean, I've written another blog on how he came about and what made him and what caused him to do this. But this is what happened. So he didn't change anything. He just wanted to make himself the center of attention. That's why he wanted all the idols destroyed, because he wanted that attention, that prayer, that worship, that respect for himself. He didn't want objects or mere objects made of clay or sand or stone to take that away from him.
Yeah, and presumably also if there's one God and he's the messenger, then only he's going to get the message. Because if there's more than one God, somebody else could claim that they've got a message, in which case that would make it difficult for him. But if there's only one God and he's the only messenger, then I can understand that. Cool. And then you've got some nice pictures here as well.
Yeah. Okay. So now these are the three daughters of Lord Shiva, and surprisingly, that's a picture on the left, and then the picture on the right, what was the last relics left and found in Yemen and Syria. So these three daughters were also, these are the statues of pre-Islamic Arabia. These were like the few that were not destroyed. And as you can clearly see, I think this picture was taken in Yemen, if I'm not mistaken, Yemen or Syria. As you can see, they look very similar. They seem to be wearing very similar attire and have very similar headgear as well.
Yes,
and
you can see the similarities.
I mean, I'm not a historian. I don't know. I can't come to a conclusion and say this is fact. But to the just as a viewer, as an observer, it's hard to miss this. Miss the fact that they are kind of the same thing.
Yes, very similar indeed.
And here is further evidence of Islam's roots. So obviously you can clearly see that one is the Hindu priests or the Hindu priests who are wearing two pieces of cloth, and you're supposed to enter a temple as pure as possible with very little materialistic uh, materialism with you, and to clear your mind and your soul, and it's all about spirituality. And the Muslims do the same thing when they follow Hajj, or they go for the regular tawaf in Mecca and Medina. And here is a piece of hadith that clearly says that in Umar reported that the Messenger of Allah forbade the Muharram to put on a cloth dyed in saffron or gauze, and he further said, one who does not find shoes to wear, he may wear stockings, but only after trimming them below the ankles. So that hadith there just completely destroys anyone trying to dispute the fact that Islam didn't come from Hinduism, because if you're going to ban a specific color and you're going to mention it in the hadiths, it's clear evidence that the Hindus were in India.
And why that specific color? Because that was their color, presumably?
Yeah, because the Hindus, it's yellow. Saffron is the colors that the Hindu priests wear when they enter a temple and when they go on their pilgrimage. That's the picture on the left.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
So obviously they were there, or he was referring to them in some way, and the Quran only talks about them, the Hindus, as idolaters or pagans, but they don't understand that we're talking about Hindus in general. And I also posted the hadith, and it says Sahih, so Sahih is truth, and it has been verified, so no one can so no one can try and dispute that.
Look it up.
And as far as sorry.
Yes, you can look it up, can't you, sir?
Yeah, you can look it up. So there is like.
Okay, I'll move on to the next one. There we go. Yeah. Borrowed continued traditions.
Yes, and there's another thing. This is continuing about the three daughters. Okay, so I'll just read it out now. When Allah referred to the tawaf of the Kaaba and did not mention Safa and Marwa in the Quran, the people asked. Now, Safa and Marwa is a small place, like between two mountains, just inside Mecca itself, inside that big mosque, right? And that was where the idols of the three daughters were placed.
Okay.
Okay. So when you look at I didn't post a picture, the image of that, but when you look at the big grand mosque in Mecca, and you see the black box in the middle, and then you see the huge vast space in the middle where everyone's doing their rounds. So the two mountains are by the side under the roof. It's covered up. Okay. So it's a small place, and that's where the statues of the three daughters were placed. And continuing, then people asked, "Oh, Allah's apostle, we used to perform tawaf between Safa and Marwa, and Allah has revealed the verses concerning tawaf of the Kaaba and has not mentioned Safa and Marwa." So they used to run around the Kaaba 7 times, and they used to run between the two mountains 7 times as well. Okay, so that's what they say by tawaf. So Allah revealed, verily al-Safa and al-Marwa are among the symbols of Allah. So here we can clearly see that even though Allah repeatedly claims that He is the only God and that nothing else will be associated to Him, He Himself is associating other holy sites that were dedicated to other goddesses and gods to Himself. Yeah, do you have anything to say?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Carry on there.
So Allah reveals okay, where did I stop? Symbols of Allah. Abu Bakr said, it seems that this verse was revealed concerning the two groups. Those who used to refrain from tawaf, which is the running around the black box, which is the Kaaba, perform the tawaf between the Safa and Marwa in pre-Islamic period of ignorance, and those who used to perform the tawaf then and after embracing Islam. So this again is very clear evidence that nothing was made up. He didn't invent anything. He just took what already existed, and this is exactly what the Hindus do in India right now. They run around the temple 7 times. They do walk between temples bare feet. They wear these special clothing and all of that stuff. So it's still happening in India, but obviously Muslims do not accept the fact that they're doing the same thing just a few months, apart from each other. I just highlighted. I posted the entire hadith because I wanted everyone to see the entire thing. But the main point I'm trying to make here is that this hadith clearly says it's something that happened before, and Muhammad accepted that it will happen after as well.
Okay, excellent. Shall I move on to the next one?
Yeah. So just to make another point, I mean, if Allah is real and He doesn't need. And He just needs you to pray to Him, and that is it. And there's no other symbols, and He refuses to accept anything. Why are Muslims running between these two mountains? Well, what do they gain by that? What does Allah achieve by getting, His followers or His believers to run between these two mountains if really you just need to pray to him?
Maybe a Muslim in the chat can answer that for us. Okay, we move on to the next one. Here's the black stone.
Yes. So here's the black stone, and this is the black stone that is representing, or that is a symbol of Lord Shiva. Now, Lord Shiva is supposed to be the greatest Lord, and and the same person that banned the Brahma, Lord Brahma, from his kingdom and condemned him to never be worshipped by humankind again. But he was too great to be represented by any kind of statue or any kind of human figure, and therefore he was represented simply by a black stone. And Muslims again never explain or don't understand where this black stone came from. They say it was a meteorite. They say that it was Allah sent it. But the fact of the matter is, Muslims claim that they are not idolaters and they don't believe in idols and they don't need to pray to anything, and that God is omnipresent and omni-aware, and you just have to pray to the sky. And yet this stone exists. What does this stone have to do with Allah? And if Allah doesn't need anything to be tied to him or represent him or be a symbol of him, what is this stone doing there? Because this stone was a pre-Islamic stone that Muhammad, because the stone wasn't even allowed to be touched by anyone. It's supposed to be so sacred and so holy that a common man can't even touch it, and it has to be done, by a special priest. So if you're washing it or touching it or any of that stuff, and they had to put this stone, this specific stone. This is before Muhammad started Islam. They had to put this stone on they were trying to figure out which of the holy men would be able to lift the stone and put it back in its place, which is after cleansing it. And Muhammad came up with this idea that they put the stone on a cloth, and all four men held the cloth so that no one touched the stone, and only he would touch the stone. And they decided that since they were arguing and they couldn't figure out who was this thing, that Muhammad's solution was the better solution, so they gave in to him and they let it happen. And this is a very popular hadith and well known by Muslims, so it's not something that they can deny. And understand that when this was happening, they were all Hindus, or they were supposedly still pagans, or still idol worshippers, and so what's something that was pre-Islamic still doing in Islam today?
Yeah, very interesting, isn't that?
Yeah.
Okay, there's the next one.
Okay, so here's where things get interesting. So Muhammad's full name, obviously now you can see the screen. It says Muhammad ibn Abdullah, and Abdullah is slave for Allah. And we all know that Muhammad's father predates Islam, because Muhammad started Islam when he was 40, if I'm not mistaken, and he ended it when he was 63, right? 23 years, yes.
That's right.
So, yeah, so Muhammad's father passed away long before he started this religion, and Allah was already used. He was a pagan. They believed in many gods. They didn't believe in a single god. Muhammad's father's father, which is the grandfather, was the keeper of the temple of the Kaaba, which is, he was probably one of those men that we saw just now in a few slides, previously, with wearing those orange robes, who was the main person that, that people went and asked for forgiveness and advice. He was the priest of the temple. He was the keeper of the Kaaba. So they were not monotheistic. And, it's not like, because Muslims always claim that, Muhammad, Arabia was monotheistic, and then they lost their way along the centuries, and they got distracted by idol worshipping and this and that and blah blah, and then Muhammad came along and set it all right. But the fact is that they were idol worshippers. They worshipped different gods, and so the fact that Muhammad's father's name was Abdullah itself, made me curious. Now we can go on to the next slide, and I hope this is getting people thinking. Stop Spam hasn't said much.
I think he's monitoring the chat there as well.
Oh, okay.
No, you're doing fine. I don't need to comment anything here.
Okay. If you need to ask something or just say something, just tell me to stop and I will. Okay, so basically, this is a Quran verse, and I wanted to know how and why the Hindus, or what were the Hindus doing in India, and when did they come? When did they get there? And there's a verse from the Quran, I'm going to read it now. Indeed, those who believed, and those who believe, keep that in mind. Believe means in the past. And those who were Jews or Christians or Sabians before Prophet Muhammad, those among them who believed in Allah and the last day and did righteousness, will have their reward with their Lord, and no fear will be there concerning them, nor will they grieve. Quran verse chapter 2, which is Surah Baqarah, verse 62. Now, he's not introducing Allah to any one of these people. He's stating that they already know who Allah is, and that alone is something that, and when you talk about the Sabians, it's actually the Sabas. And the Sabians were a special group of people. Now, when we talk about Hindus, we talk about the cluster or the cluster of religions that formed along the Indus Valley, and that's what they call Hinduism. But Saba is Tsaba, which in Sanskrit is Shiva followers. So they were specifically Shiva worshippers, and they worshipped nobody else. Okay, so that's the connection there, because
Yes,
they
that's interesting.
generally were the, sorry,
No, that's
they moved
interesting. Yeah.
out of, yeah, they moved out of India, and I think during the early migrations they moved into the Middle East, and this is probably when the Ganges River and the started overflowing, and it changed courses about 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. And northern India, which is now Pakistan and Afghanistan, the Tan countries, became difficult to live by, and I guess the flooding probably caused difficulty in agriculture and sustainability, and therefore some of the people, they migrated west. And if you look at the map, the actually I should have put the map there, but if you look at the map, and you consider Pakistan and then the Middle East, it's a very short distance. And when you consider the fact that Chinese noodles made it to Italy 2,500 years ago and turned into pasta, uh, a story from, or a Hindu religious story or a Hindu ideology could easily have made it those few hundred kilometers, to the west and stop somewhere in the Middle East easily.
Yes, there was trading and travel and so forth
Yeah,
going
there
on
was
there.
the Silk routes, there was trading, there was traveling. People were, India is one country that it's not that they have such a large population because they had more people to begin with. They didn't. We all started off with roughly the same amount of people, the same amount of migrants that made their way out of Africa, you know. And what happened was India reached the agricultural revolution way before anybody else did. So they learned to grow crops, and and to feed themselves. And while the rest of us was still hunting and gathering, which meant that we were all each responsible for sustaining ourselves on a daily basis. The Indians had achieved agricultural revolution before anybody else, which meant that they had a lot more time on their hands to kill, a lot more
Yes.
time to imagine things, a lot more time to, and then they obviously, with more agriculture, they had, they needed more hands to work on the farms. The more hands that they needed, it meant that, they had better, uh, sorry, what's the word I'm looking for, better crops. And then what happened is they got to this point of the food surplus where they had excess, and they started traveling and migrating to trade their excess food, for different things. And that's how we discovered, and that's how we've gotten this far in this world, right? I mean, by migration and discovery. So I wouldn't be surprised that after the agricultural revolution and after the food surplus began, that the Indians did indeed migrate to the west, looking for greener pastures, looking for better life, looking simply just for curiosity. And along with them, they took their stories. I mean, we're talking about. Uh, I mean, if you put a guy in solitary confinement, he'd probably lose his mind by the third day. Okay, I mean, today, people, or as humans, we have TV, we have jobs, we have careers, we have hobbies, we have millions of things to keep us entertained and occupied, and this is difficult. I mean, obviously we are more intelligent, and therefore our brains constant thinking and evolving, and we need constant interaction, and to keep us going. And when you think about it, what did they have to do with their time from morning till night? Nothing. the only form of entertainment, I mean, there was no school, there was no job, there was nothing. The only form of entertainment was to verbally discuss ideas and thoughts, and so
Yes.
it's so easy to understand this if you think of it from a logical point of view, where, someone from India, who's a Hindu, who takes his goods and travels for months on end with camels and horses. And, he would travel probably 50 or 100 kilometers and sell his goods and services. And then he'd need to have a few days of rest before he makes the journey back, you know, carrying all his belongings. And while he was, in the marketplace, or while he was selling his spices and his silk roots and, the silk products, he obviously would sit there and talk to his, oncoming traders about his beliefs, because that was the only form of entertainment. Can you imagine sitting around for 12 hours with no lights and no electricity and no fans and, and having nothing else to keep a human being, especially with our kind of intelligence going? It's so, I mean, it's the only logical explanation I could come up with as to why and how uh, Hinduism, I'm going to make a very broad and statement right now, how I think Hinduism is in fact the father of all religions in this world,
Okay, good.
not just Islam. So
Yes, yes. It's obviously one of the oldest, if not the oldest.
yeah,
And
it
here
is
we've
the
got some
oldest.
interesting photos here, pictures here.
Yes, so I showed you, obviously we've seen the pictures of Lord Shiva in the previous times, and these pictures are also pictures that were taken in Yemen and Syria before the destruction which was done by the Ottoman Empire. Not sorry, not the pictures, but the recent time. And these were the last relics that were left after the destruction by the Ottoman Empire, the last statues and the last relics. And even though many of them are not, you can't say that they are truly Indian in origin, or they're truly, they truly come from the Indus Valley, but you can see that on the picture to the right, top right of the corner, that's the most important part here, uh, where, the man is surrounded by the moon on the left, and he has a titan on the, to the back. Sorry, the moon on the right and the titan to the left of him. And if you remember correctly, with the last, with the couple of last slides that we posted just some time ago, that Lord Shiva is exactly in the same, it's the same thing. He's depicted in the same way with his titan in the back and the moon on the side. So this I think these statues or these relics are from like 3,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 years before. So this is proof that, this is not proof, I can't say that, but this is quite evident that Hinduism did in fact make it somewhere to the Middle East. They were stopped in their tracks, but they made it there.
Yes, and it certainly predates Islam, so that's no doubt about that. Okay, and then I think this is your last slide.
Yeah, so his titan. And again, Hindus hold the holy cow. Obviously, we know that India, the cow is considered sacred and the giver of life and all of that. And there are no cattle in Arabia. Cattle is very scarce because of the water, and obviously cattle require grass and things. And I always wondered, I said, listen, where does this cow thing, how did the cow, or why is there a whole chapter in the Quran named after the cow? And well, we can clearly see now why. This is nothing new to them. It is probably tradition. Yeah, it is different though, because I know that some of the verses in the Quran where the cow was mentioned is talking about Moses finding, which cow to sacrifice and all of that stuff.
Exactly.
But the thing is, they will probably just, I mean, if we consider the people, because most of the Quran wasn't even compiled in Muhammad's time. He just verbally recited it or said it. It's not like he wrote any of them down. Things were memorized during his lifetime, and everything was put together after his death. Or he started putting it together before his death. I'm not too sure, but basically, his caliphs or Abu Bakr and all of them are the ones that put it together. And when you think about it, they were literally just paying homage to their roots. in other words. Because the Surah Baqarah, which is the longest surah in the Quran, has some 267 verses, and the cow is just mentioned like what, 3 times? 3 or 4 times, and one is about some sacrifice, one is about Moses, not finding or wondering which cow to sacrifice and something like that. So yeah, I mean, this is just, and also Aisha, the Aisha's father is Abu Bakr, and that there is the father of the cow. That's Abu is father and Bakr is cow. And
Wow, so there's definitely quite a few similarities, isn't there? I mean, you can see that they can obviously claim that there's differences, and clearly there are differences as well. But some of the big similarities, as you've quite rightly pointed out, are, when you pay attention to it and you look at Hinduism and Islam and you look at the two of them, there certainly seems to be a number of the bigger things that have made their way across to Islam.
yes, definitely. And like I said, I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, this is, like I said, I'm not a historian. I can't say that this is fact. I am simply someone that researched Islam and religion in general for the last, I don't know, 20 odd years or more, probably. Always curious. So this is just a collection of everything that I've learned over the years.
No, I think this is very nice. I think this is brilliant, and I want to say thank you for your efforts here, because it shows that there is a common factor here, and there's actually more, because the story of the mountains, for example, this comes straight out of the Vedas.
Yes.
So Islam was influenced by the Hindus to a huge extent. I mean, if we look at the mathematics of the Hindus, for example, the medicine of the Hindus, a lot of that stuff came across and was then picked up even by the Greeks. And then you see this repeated in the Quran again. So there's a lot of stuff coming across from India, even from China, which you find in the Quran.
Yeah, it is. I think. Sorry, I just lost my chain of thought. It's quite early in the morning here. No, but it's because if you notice, like when I mentioned the fact that his first verse was more focused on the Christian or the Abrahamic religions or Christianity and Judaism, and that was when his wife was alive. But most of his anger, when he moved out of Mecca and he went into Medina, most of his anger was against the pagans. It was the pagans that he wanted to conquer. It was the pagans that he wanted to destroy. It was the pagans that, he wanted to cut their hands from opposite sides. And during that time, during the Medina verses, he used to love the Jews and the Christians, so there wasn't much hatred towards them. And so yes, Jesus has been mentioned, and yes, Jews have been mentioned, and most Muslims will now come and tell me, what are you talking about? Jesus has been. But yes, there is. But the thing is that when he left Medina and when he left Mecca, because he was practically ousted from there, and he went to Medina, he was surrounded by Jewish and Christian tribes, and he had no choice but to be kind to them, because he went in there as a refugee, and he had to entice them by using verses that he was aware of, I'm sure, which he learned from his wife Khadija. And that's why Jesus and Moses and Noah and all of these other Christian and Jewish messiahs and prophets have been mentioned so many times in the Quran, because I think he was in Medina for what, 11 years or 13 years or something like that. But his hatred was mainly towards the pagans, and that, I feel, was his main focus. He just wanted to garner followers from the Christian and the Jewish tribes, and he pushed his hatred towards the pagans. But then what happened was, when the Christians and the Jews accepted him as a member of their society, and they didn't have a problem with him living amongst them, but they didn't want to follow him, that's when his hatred towards them also started, revealing itself in the Quran, where you say, even the Jews and the Christians are, going to turn into pigs and swine and dog, and, started swearing at them as well. So that's how I think the combination of all three religions came about. And it's funny how the only three religions that are mentioned are, Hinduism, of course, was mentioned in a very subtle way, are the three religions that was familiar to Muhammad himself. I mean, if this is a universal God that knew of all the people in all the world and created everyone in all corners, he should have at least mentioned the Chinese, or the Native Americans or the
Exactly.
Mayans, I mean, come
And this
on.
is the striking thing. If you look at all this, and this is something that you've pointed out very nicely, is the real similarities down to the individual names of the gods, where we can see in history the detour that these names made via the Nabateans, because the Hindus influenced the Nabateans, and the Nabateans then influenced the Muslims, which is a mixture between all the different belief systems and ideologies in the region. It was just them that one person or a group, I don't know, we don't know what actually happened there, then came and took all these things, made it into one single book, into one belief, into one ideology, and took it up as a political system, and then just took the stories to enhance the power that they had, attributing this to a god. And this is the funny thing, when you see these different types of influence, just what you've pointed out, I think it's fascinating to see how this worked.
Yes,
Yes,
I could make one more statement, but then I would be talking about Judaism and Christianity as well. But should I or should I
Yeah,
not?
exactly. Yeah, exactly. I'm sorry, because if you look at this, I mean, this always brings back the story of the flood, which you
Yeah,
can see from the, texts from 6,000 years ago, and you suddenly
yeah,
find it in the Quran.
yeah. I mean, even the stories of the flood is, so, I mean, they say that it's, Noah's Ark, but the fact of the matter is that that was practically copied from the Epic of Gilgamesh, which was written in what, 3,500 years or even,
It's
and
actually
then
older. It goes back to the Matrahazi.
yeah, exactly. And then you get an older story that comes or has its roots in India, near the Indus Valley, that talks about a flood where a king jumped on his boat, and he took with him all of his animals, and he left his human servants behind because he didn't care much for them.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you know,
Brilliant.
it is. Yeah, it is. I mean, even when you talk about, I don't know if I should say this, but even if you talk about the roots of Judaism, where uh, should I say this or should I not?
no, we'll keep it with Islam. We'll just
With
focus on
Islam,
Islam on the show. Yeah.
okay.
So I
So
would
yeah, so
thank you. I mean, I want to echo what Stops said. Thank you so much for coming on, for preparing the presentation, and obviously sharing. And I hope you've enjoyed doing it, and sharing
oh,
with our audience as well.
yeah, I forgot. I think you shared the wrong slide, because there are certain things that I sent you in the recent one that was missing. Can I just make that statement before I leave?
Yes, of course. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the main things that the Hindus do is that they pray and they wash themselves in the Ganga river, and they consider that holy water. And holy water, the blood of Brahma, and blood of Shiva, and something like that. And if you get into that, you have to wash yourself, and it cleanses your soul of all the evil and negativity and toxicity. And the Muslims do the same thing with Zamzam, which practically means holy water as well. And it's considered Abraham's wife, or his mistress, had been running between these two mountains, and they had found, she had found this well because God had given her the water. And it makes, that there is another huge connection, that if these Indians, if it was indeed the Indians that migrated out of India and moved themselves uh, into the Middle East, that they were amazed that such a well existed in such a barren and dry land, and they thought that it was their God who had saved them and rescued them by sending them their water all the way from India.
Yes, indeed. I also want to welcome in one of our regular panelists, Thunderous.
Hi, guys.
Good evening. Good evening. Born, thank you so much. It's been interesting. Obviously, I don't know much about Hinduism, and as I've listened to yourself and Stops talk, you can, clearly Hinduism is much older than Islam, and there certainly seems to be a number of things that were borrowed there. And it's fascinating to share this, because obviously most people don't know this or aren't aware of any of these things.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's you have to be very observant to make the connection, because, like I said, they look vastly different. Vastly different.
Can I ask some questions that were posed in the
Yes,
chat
go
in the
ahead.
meantime?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm going to take the specific ones.
Just give me a second. I'll be back. I just need to get a glass of water.
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
of course,
So
we have
because
our
Beej was asking, isn't it more likely that people get the same idea so that they would appear in different stories anyway? And this is, I mean, we can only say yes. So Uday says, it's not true. The Deepavali is not the end of the Hindu year. Ugadi is the end of the Hindu year for most Hindus. Look up Ugadi on Wikipedia. So we need to ask her about this if she knows anything. Never heard of Hindu women being forced into her husband's brother. Hinduism is infamous for sati, which is the widow put into the cremation fire of her husband. Then Islam is more a combination of Judaism and pagan Arab cultures. The pagan Arab culture may have some commonalities with Hinduism. Then BNS says these traditions probably existed in several religions pre-Islam, not just Hinduism. And does anyone know if the black stone in the Kaaba is a Hindu lingam? I don't know what a lingam is.
No, I'm not aware either.
And then 2010 Chandru said that Lord Siva did not have 3 daughters. Shown in the picture, there were only 2 sons, Ganesha and Kartikeya. Okay, so those are the questions, the specific questions on this on this presentation.
Excellent.
So the one thing I think, yes, it is obvious that I don't think you can deny that Islam is a mixture of different influences, of different religions, of different stories, of different civilizations, of different cultures, of different groups, of different all belief systems as such. And yes, I think because Hinduism was the predominant one and the oldest one in the region, I think this is obvious that this has played some sort of influence, some sort of role in the creation, in the formation of Islam. So I think this is something that you can't deny. To what extent? Well, this is what we saw today, that it's very difficult to ascertain what percentage is part of what. Here, what I think, and this is what Born Atheist has done very nicely, is shown that there are similarities, and some of them are actually quite striking. So this is not, I don't think it's the intention is to show that this is exactly taken from Islam, that from Islam has taken this 100% from Hinduism. I think the intention here is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Born Atheist, if I'm wrong, I think what you are trying to show is that there are some striking resemblances, but it does not mean that this is definitely taken from Hinduism.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I can't, like I said, I'm no historian. I can't, say that this is absolute fact. But you can't ignore the fact that, that they are very, very similar.
Exactly. Yeah. So I got that right. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you hear? Do you have cordless phones? Did you hear the questions I asked?
No, I just came in.
Okay. Deepavali is not the end of the Hindu year. Ugadi is the end of the Hindu year for most Hindus.
Okay. I just thought it was Diwali. And I did some research. It said it was Diwali.
Okay, so this is
just... festivals have many different names for the festivals, and I may have confused one with the other. It's very difficult. So.
Okay.
But I was always, I mean, I could be wrong, but I was always under the impression that.
And I've got a valid question here. I would ask her to quote her sources, which I suspect may have been from some Hindu supremacist site. Is this something? Did you sort of gather this from different sources?
2020, like I read a lot. I read a lot of encyclopedia and read and research. And I can give you the sources for many of this, but it's obvious that it's 25 years of researching, and it's something that I just pin down as my thoughts and just, things that I've learned over the years.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not expert
Okay,
on
then
Hinduism.
let's leave it at that. That's the way that it is. So you didn't at the end of the presentation put a page up with all the sources and things like that.
Yeah.
So Chandra again says, I agree there are similarities, but not summary overblown. Okay, this is the whole point. This is what we're trying to show, and I think Born Atheist has done a marvelous job of showing exactly that. Another question was, never heard of Hindu women being forced to a husband's brother. Hinduism is infamous for sati, which is the widow being put into the cremation fire of her husband, but not that she was forced to, like in the Jewish portion in the Old Testament, where how was it? Oh yeah, it was God who considered the one guy to be wicked, so he killed him, and then told the brother to go and have sex with the brother's widow. And he says, no, fuck you, I'm not going to have sex with her. And he killed him too. So this is in the Old Testament.
I remember this story from the Old Testament as well. I remember reading it somewhere, but yes, but there was a time when the Hindus, I can't remember which sect, but the only way for a widow in some sect of Hinduism to, this is not now, obviously, this is like ancient Hinduism, where you'd have to throw yourself in the, and actually something else just came to mind. I mean, Muslims always state that Muhammad came about and he stopped uh, the families burying their girls alive, and that
Yes.
he set free, women, and he gave women back their rights. And before him, people were killing and burying women alive. And we also know that the Hindus, or in the Hindu customs, especially in ancient Hindu customs, that girls were seen as as demonic or a burden on the family, and not blessings from God, and that sons were more revered as and families that had girls would bury their kids alive. So there's another connection there. I mean, it just popped into my head just now, but yeah.
Okay. Then the other thing is that Islam is a combination of Judaism, pagan, Arab cultures. I think you mentioned this, but just so that you know that there was a question regarding this, that the pagan Arab culture may have some commonalities with Hinduism, but in general, it's a combination more of Judaism and Christianity and then pagan Arab cultures. And I think this is something that you mentioned as well.
Yeah.
Traditions probably existed in several religions. Okay, this question, black stone. Did you ever come across a black stone in Hindu? He says, is a Hindu lingam. Do you know what a Hindu lingam is?
Yes, it's a Shiva lingam. It's a black stone. It represents all the 7 deities, and I think the main, the oval part of it is Shiva, and then you get the lingam, and then you get the beaming, which is the father of creation, which is the Brahma, and Vishnu, which is the continuation, which is that stout thingy. I think he's considered to be Vishnu, or that part is considered Vishnu, and the top part is considered Shiva, so something like that. So it's called the Shiva lingam.
Okay, all right.
It represents the beginning, the continuation, and the end of all things.
So there is such a thing.
Yeah.
And I was not aware of that. This is new for me. Chandru, this is absolutely false. Neither the Muslims nor the Hindus buried female children. Well, I'm sorry to have to disappoint you. I've just had this discussion and I just looked it up. There are a couple of sources which mention exactly this. And this is going on still today. So in Pakistan and in India this year, okay, there were people who were sent to jail for exactly this because they felt that the family was being shamed that they had a girl and not a boy. So this is very, very recent. And I happen to know this because I had this very discussion on Facebook yesterday or today or something.
Yeah, it still goes on in very small pockets of, of rural society in India to this day. They have tried to abolish it, but it's an ancient custom that has come down, through the centuries.
Exactly, yes. So I don't know why somebody says, no, this doesn't exist. Okay, then the last one is Lord Shiva does not have, or did not have 3 daughters. There were only 2 sons, Ganesha and Kartikeya.
Yes, the 3 daughters are not well known. He's not 2 sons. He had 3 sons, but he has 3 daughters, and they aren't, they're not very well known, but he did have them.
Okay, gotcha. All right. So were Jews Hindus too before they became? I don't think you can say that Jews used to be Hindus. I think that Hinduism, as a belief, is one of the oldest religions, one of the oldest God-based belief systems that we have on the planet. So the Jews were influenced by several different groups, and I think this is what is intended to show.
Oh, that's been fantastic. Thank you so much, Born Atheist. Thank you very much for joining us. If it's still early over there, hopefully you've still got a time of your day left. So again, on behalf of the Gin and Tonic Show, very much thank you for coming on. Please do continue following us, and if you've got any a website or a YouTube channel or anything like that, let me know, and I'll be happy to share that so people can see more of the information that you want to share.
Okay, sure. I don't have. I just have a blog, and I sent you the link. I have to edit it. It's not. I'm sure you've read my comment at the end of the blog where I said, this is just me penning down all my thoughts before I forget them. And
yes, no, that's always a good way to at least get it down so that you can remember it.
Exactly.
Oh, Beecher says Hinduism and Judaism arose around the same period. I thought Hinduism was much older.
No, I think that is a possibility. Like, I wanted to make a statement about Hinduism and Judaism because that's something that while making this presentation, that just clicked to me, and I was like, oh my God, an aha moment. But there is a possibility that it probably came about at the same time.
Because I was under the impression that Hinduism is much older. Okay, thanks, Beach. Then I've just learned something. Okay, then let's go to some general questions. According to Christian Prince, if a Muslim man has a daughter outside his marriage, apparently he's allowed to sleep with her. This is not in a hadith. This is according to fiqh, and this is the jurisprudence. There is a very remote case where a man can have external sex with a woman, have a daughter, later marry the woman, so that the daughter is an illegitimate daughter and therefore not really his actual or real or whatever daughter, and therefore he can have sex with his own daughter. So there is a case that is possible in Sharia, yes. What do you think of Vido Witt's response to Ali Dawah? I don't know. Does anybody know a video of Vido Witt's responding to Ali Dawah?
I think I watched him. I think I watched this specific video, but I can't remember the content or what was in it.
Okay, I've also not seen it. Then, how about Christianity is stupid as a topic? Why specifically Islam? Because we are talking about a specific brand of ideology, which is Islam. I don't know why people need to immediately have us talk about other topics as well. We have selected as a topic Islam, and I think that's sufficient. Why should we talk about Christianity as well? It's bad enough that there are not enough people looking out after Islam, that a lot of people are talking about Christianity, but not enough, in my eyes anyway, about Islam. Okay, then, because in my opinion, Christianity is stupid. Islam is at least a logical ideology. No, Islam is totally illogical. I've got a whole series on.
I could make a statement on what you just said about why people only talk about Christianity. Now, as an atheist, it's obvious that I don't believe in any other religion either, and that point blankly says that everything else is nonsense to me as well. But Islam, the problem today is Islam, because the caliphate, like what we know of today, how ISIS is trying to kill everyone and bomb everyone and all of that. Christianity and Judaism went through the same phases. That's what you call colonization, whether it's either you you convert or you die. But the thing is, it's reformed now. And the biggest problem that this world is facing currently, because Islam is the newest kid on the block, is that they are not willing to reform and adapt to modern ways of life. That's why I focus mostly on Islam and nothing else.
Yeah. Rob is just telling me, do you still have time?
I can. I mean, I didn't go out on
I wanted to make sure that we covered everything for you because we're going to sort of go off topic now. So I just wanted to make sure that you had covered
I can actually leave because I was just wondering whether I can go or whether you wanted me to stay. I have no problem with my time. No issues at all.
Well, I think here's a good point to say thank you so much because we could just go. We're going to go off onto general topics now. So, brilliant! Thank you so much again for coming on. It's been a pleasure having you as a guest. Please do continue to follow us, and obviously we'll keep in touch on Facebook if there's any other topics you'd like to bring in the future.
Yeah, sure. Maybe next year I'll have something else.
Yes, and you're more than welcome to stay.
It's not very far away, is it?
Okay then. Thanks for having me on. It's a privilege being here, and have a good night.
Good night. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Born Atheist. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Pleasure listening to your experience.
Thank you.
Now, Fruitful is waiting for Rob because he thinks he's going to get better treatment from Rob than from me, which I hope is not true. The thing is, Fruitful, you ramble on and on. You come and invent words, and then you say this is evidence when it is not, and you don't even know how to explain the words that you are inventing. So this is like really tedious. And then you say things like Muhammad is the reason we are on the way to paradise, when we have shown, according to the literature, according to the texts, which Islamic scholars have deemed to be authentic, that Muhammad raped, beheaded, enslaved, tortured, and killed people, that he encouraged his own men to enjoy raping female slaves. So this is not a way to paradise. This is horrendous. And you cannot go and say, well, this is something we made up and this is just these are authentic. These are Sahih hadiths from Sahih Bukhari and from Sahih Muslim. And there are dozens which all corroborate this, which all give the same identical story. So he is not the best example. He is not a mercy to mankind. Muhammad was a brutal warlord. He was a person, a guy, a man, whatever you want to call this, a character of his time. He thought that slavery was brilliant. He thought that raping women was brilliant. He thought that having a lot of women was brilliant. And this is what we see in Islam. And if you come on here and you tell us that this is what we should aspire to, I'm sorry. I think you are a moron if you are trying to sell this version of Islam to us here and tell us that Muhammad was the best person ever and that we should use him and see him as an idol and a role model for today in the 21st century. That's not the case.
Well, I think that's a very firm no from Stops then.
I mean, if Fruitful has a point, this is great. I listen to people. Really, I would like to learn. But from Fruitful, you cannot learn anything. He will just come on here and use his, what is the latest word he has created?
Particulate.
I mean, what the fuck is a particular? I mean, I can say, actually, no, I think targos are much better than particulars. And my targos actually really explains the whole planet, the whole world and everything. And your particulars, you can go and shove them up wherever the sun doesn't shine. But my targos beats your particulars any day. I mean, come on. Okay, let's go to the rest of the questions. Can you please invite Dr. Richard Carrier? Okay, like I said, we had Tom Holland here because Tom Holland actually is a historian who made Islam-specific research and did a lot of stuff on Islam. I do not know that Dr. Carrier has anything on Islam. I mean, I've invited him before because I think he's an interesting person, but he is not really so much into Islam. And plus, if you book him, you need to pay, just as what we had with Mishka University. Maybe not 1,500 euro, but Any other opinions on Dr. Carrier?
I mean, I've heard him speak and so forth, but you're right. I'm not sure that he would add anything to the critique of Islam. He's more focused on the Bible, I think, and Jesus and sort of, along the Bard Ehrman sort of thing, as far as I know. I don't know. Thunderous might know a little bit more about it, but I don't know that he would add that much value to this show in particular. I could be wrong.
Ali
Rizvi, I've invited. I haven't heard back from him. Because we had...
Hang on a moment, Pops. The Thunderous was going to say something?
No, I was just going to say I actually hadn't heard of the other guy that you'd mentioned.
You jack up the volume. I can't hear.
Yeah, I've pushed it up.
I hadn't heard the other guy before, who the other person is, but I did hear Bart Ehrman's name mentioned. So if he's in a similar vein, then I don't think he's going to say anything different or anything new that Bart Ehrman hasn't already said. I also find that with such people, I think they stay away from Islam because it tends to be a safer subject. To be a critique of Islam is basically, you make sure you've written your will, eh?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if there's anything else, Stops. If you don't feel like Fruitful will add anything, and I'm dubious that he is. I mean, people in the chat want to have him on here, but I think it's more for entertainment than for sort of educational or serious discussion.
And I'm sorry, this is not spewing hate. This is not something that... These are the facts. Okay, I'm just looking at the hadith. I'm just repeating what they say. So if somebody shows me that I'm wrong, please go ahead and show me. But at the moment, this is what I see. This is what I read. This is what authentic hadiths tell us. So what is there? This has nothing to do with hate.
Yeah, well, obviously that's Rob's mission is pulling Fruity Loops out of the matrix. Yeah, I think there's a lot of fun being made. Fruity or Fruit Loops and all that sort of stuff. I think people have jumped on the name there.
It's a fruitcake, but this is. But there's no benefit.
No, I think we'll do something on an after show. If there's any other Muslim that wants to join us, let us know. Otherwise, we can do an after show. But I think having it live, I'm not sure that there's a benefit. I mean, we've had it on before.
There's one quick question, Rob. We did this last time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on the after show, we said to Fruitful, okay, here's the problem with the three. No, who was it? Where we had the three sentences.
Oh, you know what? Sorry, Stops to interrupt you there. We were supposed to have Stacks back here. And he said on the show, Stacks, are you here? If M Stacks is here, we wanted him to come on and defend the inheritance era. He said
exactly. That's it was not Fruitless.
No. It was M Stacks Gang. M Stacks Gang, who's a Somali Muslim. He was on last time. He said he was going to come on. If he's here, has anybody in the chat heard or seen M Stacks? Where is he? He did say he was going to come on. He said he was going to do all his homework and he's going to come here and defend the inheritance, how it's not incorrect.
Rumor has it he was trying to find an abacus that works the numbers out for him.
What? I can't hear him.
He said,
Rob, repeat.
I was saying M Stacks is probably still busy trying to find an abacus that works out the numbers for him.
It would have to be an Islamic abacus as well, then.
Exactly my point.
Oh, an abacus. I'm wearing headphones and I cannot understand Thunderous. Can you believe it?
Yeah, sorry. I think it was a little bit soft there as well. I've turned him up as much as I can. Somebody's asking, let Fruitful on to defend the inheritance thing. I don't think he even knows what the inheritance thing is. And we'll eventually get onto particulars to try and work out the inheritance thing, so I'm not sure.
Fruitful, how many wives do you think a Muslim can have? Is it 4 or 9? This is also a funny thing in the Quran because most people don't even know. If you read the Arabic Quran and you go to chapter number 4, sentence number 3, and you read what it says there, that it's okay to marry the orphans. So don't take advantage of the orphans, marry them in 2s and 3s and 4s. Now, the way that it is translated, the way that it is interpreted is that you can marry 2 or 3 or 4 wives. And a lot of people, a lot of Muslims think that you are allowed to have 4 wives in Islam. But according to the Quran, it says 2 and 3 and 4, which would make it 9. So what do Muslims actually believe? Do they believe the Quran, which says 9 wives, or do they believe what the scholars say, who say 4 wives? And this is the problem that we have in Islam, that the people follow scholars, and it's not as fruitful claims with evidence. No, they follow scholars without evidence. Somebody says something and it sounds nice to them, and then they say, Yasir Qadi is excellent, Noman Ali Khan, he's excellent, or whoever it is, and then they follow that person, and then whatever they say, that's then what Islam says, even if it is not. And that is why a very simple question is to ask them, what do you think? If the Quran says you should have 9 wives, why do you believe it's 4?
I'll tell you what we'll do. How about this? Because people are asking for him to join. Let's do it this way. Can you do a hadith of the day? And then I'll give him the link. He can come in. If we feel it's fruitless as opposed to fruitful, I'll just edit it out at the end, and we'll finish on the hadith. So if you can bring us up a hadith for an unofficial or a official end to the show, and then we'll bring him on live because people want to see it. So we'll have it, and we'll decide afterwards whether we keep it in the live show. How's that?
Okay. All right. Hadith of the week. Let's see which one is next. Okay, mountains. Brother makes a good point here. Oh, good golly. Anas bin Malik narrated that. Oh, by the way, I was making fun of, just in case you don't know, I was making fun of Zakir Naik because he's always on the mountains, and that Frank Press was the consultant for President Reagan, and he wrote a book, The Earth, where he says exactly what the Quran says, and he confirms that the mountains are pegs. No, he does not. And there's a lot of evidence there with photos and everything that I've all put together on the video on mountains, which shows all this. So please don't come and come with us. Anas bin Malik narrated that the Prophet said, when Allah created the earth, it started shaking. So he created the mountains and said to them, upon it. So it began to settle. The angels were amazed at the strength of the mountains. So they said, "O Lord, is there among your creatures one who is more severe than the mountains?" He said, "Yes, iron." "O Lord," said the angels, "is there anything among your creatures that is more severe than iron?" He said, "Yes, fire." So the angel said, "O Lord, is there anything among your creatures that is more severe than fire?" He said, "Yes, water." They said, "O Lord, is there anything among your creatures that is more severe than water?" He said, "Yes, wind." They said, "O Lord, is there anything among your creatures more severe than wind?" He says, "Yes, the son of Adam. He gives charity with his right hands while hiding it from his left."
Okay. On that lovely note, we will...
Can anybody just tell me what I've just read?
Not yet. I just want to say, thank you to everybody, especially a thank you to Born Atheist. And that's the end of the official show. We'll see you again next Friday, 8 p.m.